Welcome to episode 209 of the Ski Podcast, and thanks for joining us, listener. Today, we are going to be discussing Les Alpes in France, Trysil in Norway, and finding out more about a great new way of travelling to the snow on your ski holiday. Now, my name's Iain Martin. I'd like to introduce my guest today. I'm delighted to welcome two first-timers to the show this week. Firstly, we have freelance journalist Rebecca Miles. Now, given that I've known Beck since about 2001, when we both worked together at Natives, I'm kind of surprised it's her first time. But hi, Bex, how are you?
Hi, Ian. Really good, thank you. Really happy to be on.
I gather we've got you up quite early this morning because you just came back from the Alps.
Yeah, do excuse me if I sound a little bit sleepy.
No worries. Well, we'll come on to where you were a little bit later. My second guest today is also first time on the show. I'm delighted to welcome Tarrant Anderson, founder of the company that does what it says on the tin, but a little bit more, Vans for Bands. Hi, Tarrant. How are you?
Hi, Ian. Yeah, thank you for inviting me on the show. Really happy to be here.
Excellent. Whereabouts are you, Tarrant?
So I'm in Oxford.
Okay. And Bex, where are you?
I'm in East London.
Okay, so we're all in the UK today. That doesn't happen that often in the show. But what I do like to do is I like to ask my guests when you skied or snowboarded last. So we were chatting in the green room earlier, and Bex, I think there's a bit of a giveaway there. Probably very recently. Where was that?
Yeah, very recently. I was in Les Minuit in the Three Valleys. So just got back yesterday. It was one of those heartbreaking journeys home from a ski resort. It was absolutely dumping. and the forecast for today is amazing.
Okay. So I guess, we might as well just discuss that now. So therefore, you left. Today is Thursday, the 11th of April. So you left on Wednesday, the 10th.
Yes.
And when did it start snowing? Because did it start snowing on Tuesday?
Yeah, it started snowing on Tuesday. Snowed quite heavily overnight on Tuesday. Remained fairly white out on Wednesday and kept spluttering as well throughout the day. And as we were leaving, it was starting to clear up. So it's just looking good if you're heading out for the very end of the season. It's looking strong.
Yeah. Well, I left Les Alpes on Saturday, and we had all sorts of weather during that particular week, ranging from 90 to 100 kilometre-an-hour winds, which closed down most of the resort, to beautiful sunshine and snowstorms as well. But one of the things I noticed just as we were leaving, that the temperature was going to skyrocket, and we're going to come on to that a little bit later on. But when you left, it was snowing, so evidently it had cooled down.
Yes, it had, because it was super warm at the weekend.
Tarrant, question for you then. When did you last ski or snowboard?
I'm embarrassed to say it was early 90s, so over 30 years ago. Really,
right.
Really
now, it's not often we have guests on the show who spent that or who've been that long without skiing or snowboarding. Well, I would highly recommend you get back out there again, possibly in one of your vans, and we'll come on to that a little bit later on. Just now, we were talking about the snow situation out in Les Minuit. I mentioned I was in Les Alpes with a really big range of temperatures and weather. The season in Les Alpes will continue through to the 28th of April. There's still plenty of skiing left. David George from episode 206, listeners might recall, mentioned slingshot temperatures. I mean, we actually saw it change by about 15 degrees over 48 hours from Thursday to Saturday. But after a warm weekend, as Beck said, it's been snowing again. So let's have a listen to a few snow reports sent in by some of our contributors.
Hi, Ian and Ski Podcast listeners. It is Simon here out in Flaine, part of France's fourth largest ski area, the Grand Massif. And as of today, the 9th of April, it looks like winter has returned. We've had a real mixed bag this Easter, with some of the best powder days of the season coming at the start of the month, but the last week has just been sunshine and slush. But as of this morning, it is absolutely dumping, making for a really positive end to the season. The whole of the resort is covered in snow, and I think tomorrow could be the last big day of the season. It's been a fantastic season here, and if you want to learn any more about France's Grand Massif and Flaine in particular, you can check out my vlogs on my YouTube channel, Simon J. Burgess. But for now, it's time to just enjoy the last of the season's snow, and good luck if you are getting out in the next couple of weeks.
Well, hi everybody. It is very snowy once again in Val d'Isère today. snowing all the way down to the valley floor at 1,850 metres. So the incredible season that we've had here is continuing again, and we've still got another 4 weeks left of the season. I'm expecting that we will have incredible snow conditions right the way up to the end of the season. It does get a little bit slushy and soft in the afternoons, and especially if there's a big freeze overnight, a bit firm in the mornings, but conditions for this time of year are probably the best I've experienced in 20 odd years of living here, roughly. The snow should stay fantastic for off-piste early at altitude, and the spring snow should set up very nicely. In terms of skiing down into the valley floor as we enter the last month or so of the season, I am expecting us to be able to ski all the way down, whether it's up at the Forney end of town, the centre or Ladai, all the way down to the valley floor. And looking forward into the summer conditions after what has been a record-breaking season for snowfall above 2,500 metres. I'm expecting the glacier to be open for business for fantastic summer skiing conditions. And potentially, has happened in the past, some of the Belvard slopes such as the Vert and Orange and runs like that might be open for summer skiing in late May into early June. The last time that happened was during the lockdown COVID year, ironically. The conditions are fantastic and will remain that way as we enter the last few weeks of the season and towards the summer.
Hi Iain, Alex from 150 Days of Winter with an end-of-season snow report from the Three Valleys. We've had almost every sort of weather over the past couple of weeks, from Saharan sand to dumps of fresh snow yesterday. Courchevel officially closes on the 21st, a week after Courchevel 1650, and most ancillary pistes closing on the 14th. Just after, Courchevel hosts the X3 Triathlon from Beauzel to the top of Salier, which I know Iain has taken part of in the past. If that wasn't enough, Courchevel is also hosting the second edition of the Durbike downhill mountain biking competition on the closing day from the snow-covered Salier down to the quite green runs of Le Prat. For those of you still in need of a ski fix, don't worry, Val Thorens is currently still open with great snow coverage until the 5th of May, as they usually celebrate Dutch Week. And on that bombshell, have a great summer. I will be spending it in the mountains. See you next November. Ciao.
Thanks to Simon, Steve and Alex for those snow reports. Regular listeners will know that the British Championships took place last week in Teen. I just want to give a quick shout out to Steve's daughter, Olivia, who is now the under-10 British champion in the slalom. So well done to you, Olivia. And I know that Steve is a very proud dad. Now, there's plenty of skiing left. If you're lucky enough to be flexible, why not sneak out for a late season trip? There's some great deals around. And if you're heading to the Snow Listener, then don't forget that you can save money when you book your ski hire in sportrent.com and use the code SKIPODCAST. And that will give you a guaranteed discount on all ski hire in France, Austria and Switzerland. And as it goes, you don't even need to use that code. Just take the link in the show notes. Now, I mentioned last weekend, it was the warmest ever start to April in France. It hit 29 degrees Celsius in Grenoble on Saturday, 27 in Albertville and Bourg-Saint-Maurice. And this winter was already the third warmest on record in France. So if you'd like to find out a little bit more about that, you can read a blog post I wrote on Ski Flight Free. Also on Ski Flight Free, a more positive story and a very well-timed one. Lobbying is underway in Switzerland for a direct London to Geneva train. That would only take 5 hours and 12 minutes. And there is a petition underway at the moment. She's just gone over 5,000 signatories. I'll put a link to that in the show notes. Bex, I know you've travelled quite a lot out to the Alps. Have you ever done it by train?
Yes, as often as possible. It does prove tricky, doesn't it? That sounds a great idea to have an option direct to Geneva. I'd love to get on that.
Yeah, it would be fantastic. I mean, initially, it's actually been discussed in the Swiss Parliament. Initially, they were looking at a Basel to London train. But actually, the part of this petition is they point out that there are over 2 times as many people who go in and out of Geneva than Basel. So it would make much more sense to do it there. Now, on a lighter note, I wondered if either of you had seen any ski April Fools. I blogged about this on Skipedia. There was one about Courchevel, who said that because the Olympics are coming up in Paris, they were going to move some of the classic monuments out the way to create a bit more space. So they're going to relocate the Eiffel Tower on the Celea. Not very convincing, but a really good graphic. Maribel spent invested a lot of time in creating a video about their new Merry Eat service, where you could just like ring up from any location on the piste and get something delivered to you. Actually, incredibly plausible. And actually, similar kind of business to that existed a few years ago with something called Picnics on the Piste. But the best one was by our friend Toffa at latania.co.uk, who wrote a very detailed post about how the Bou Blanc mountain restaurant was going to be taken over and would become a new Folie Douce. And it was so good and so convincing in the comments on the Facebook. There were loads of people saying, "Oh, I can't believe it. I used to love going there with my kids. It's going to ruin it. They'll have all this music, etc." Completely everyone missing that it was obviously the 1st of April. I wondered, Bex, did you see any of those?
I did. And also, I mean, the Three Valleys go to town on April Fools, don't they? So Les Menuires, they put out a video on their social media channels saying, introducing this new cheese that they finish under the snow. It like matures under the snow, and people totally fell for it. It was wonderful, and of course, it was just an April Fool's.
Oh, it's sort of vaguely plausible, because I seem to remember in the Pyrenees there is, I think it's in Courtrai, where they have this wine and they bury it under the snow to help it hit the right vintage. It's a special vintage, something like that. So, but cheese, less likely to work. Tarrant, did you come across any April Fools that entertained you this year?
I didn't, but it does strike me that it'd be a good day to bury bad news in the future.
Yeah. For sure. I mean, sometimes you see stories that it's very hard to tell from looking at them. Could this be an April Fool?
Exactly,
or
yeah.
Worryingly, is this too close to? It is the truth because it's so close to the truth. Just one final bit on April Fools. Regular listeners will know my interview in episode 204 with Mike Gore, the CEO of Vail Resorts Europe, caused plenty of debate, and we've still got more discussion about that to come later on in our feedback section. But there were two great April Fool's stories, which both prey on those kind of monopolistic fears that some people have. One of them was about how Disney have bought Vail Resorts. People worry that Vail Resorts is the Disneyfication of skiing, but that got a lot of traction straight away. And the other one was about Vail Resorts buying Altera, and these are the two biggest companies in the States anyway. Vail Resorts have 36% of the market. I think Altera have 18%. So these fears continue, and again, they provoked a lot of reactions. However, that was a little while ago now. More recently, I was in Ladies Out. It was actually my annual family holiday, and we were in a group of 15 of us in total, 6 parents and 9 children. I call them children. They were all aged between 16 and 21. So maybe a few of them were adults. Doesn't necessarily feel like that when they're your kids. But Ladies Out really ticks all the boxes for this kind of trip, in my opinion. Everyone loved the skiing. We picked it because it's a really high area. You've got the glacier up there. It's a big ski area. What was really interesting this time for me, being a parent of teens, is that they were all going out and enjoying the apres-ski. A couple of years ago, they were in core collective, group lessons and things like this. Maybe we were taking them along to soft play places, maybe more than a couple of years ago. And now, the adults are kind of, going to bed, and the kids are going out to bars like Smithy's and the Penguin Bar and the Polar Bear and the Avalanche nightclub there. And I would like to thank Eleanor from the tourist office in particular, because she gave us a tip on the umbrella bar, which they absolutely loved for après-ski. Now, I'm going to come to our journey shortly, because that was a huge part of why the holiday was such a big success. But the big story coming up for Ladies Out is the development of the new Gendry 3S lift. Now, if you've been to Ladies Out, you know that the Gendry is the main gondola that goes up from the resort to the glacier. And it's really important for the resort. But that is being replaced And I spoke to Anthony Guzman from the lift company AEON to find out more about it. I'm sitting here in Les Deux Alpes. I had a really good week so far, and I've just been lucky enough to have the opportunity to meet Anthony Guzman, who is Sales and Marketing Director at SATA, which is now renamed AEON. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Bonjour.
Bonjour. Well, we've had a little chat already, and actually one of the first questions I asked you was, SATA I've always understood is a company that runs Les Deux Alpes and runs Outdoors and runs Le Grave, but you've renamed the company. That's going through that process right now, right?
Yes, we're in the middle of that process. SATA will be probably called in the next years AEON, which means for eternity.
AEON. Well, I've seen it all over the place. You've got the branding.
Right now, it's like a signature.
Yeah, you've got the branding up like, already. It's on all of the lifts and everything. And so, that is working. And the reason we're here in Les Deux Alpes today is there's a huge project going on right now. I think the cost is 135 million euros. And that is replacing the existing Gendry Express with a new Gendry 3S lift. And I think if anyone has been to Les Deux Alpes, they'd know the Gendry Express. It's a main lift that takes you all the way up to 3,200 at the glacier. But this new lift is going to be a massive upgrade on that, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yes, that's correct. It's the same place, but with a new dimension. Thanks to the new Gendry, we're going to improve drastically our client's experience. Right now, it takes 40 minutes to go up to the glacier. It will be 17 minutes. The weekend transport right now, 1,700 clients per hour. It will be 3,000 in December.
So way more people going up.
Way more people. Faster.
Twice as fast.
Absolutely.
Which sounds like super good. Is it going to be more crowded up there because of that?
No, the goal is not, as we mentioned it, the goal is not to increase the number of clients on the ski area, because that depends actually on the capacity of the resort with the number of beds available, like the accommodations. So we're really focused on the satisfaction of our clients. I think we had to modernize the Gendry. So we'll have the same number of clients and skiers on the ski area, but it will be a totally different experience. It will be much faster, modern, and much more comfortable.
Yeah, and you say much more comfortable. I mean, the 3S lift, my understanding from how you explained it to me before, you've got 3 cables, but it just makes it much smoother. But it's also going to be less of an impact on the mountain itself. You've got fewer pylons?
Yes. Right now we have 17 pylons on the mountain area. We'll only have 7. So we'll have less of a visual impact on the mountain, smoother, and we'll be able to operate also with stronger winds. Right now, it's kind of difficult to run the Gendry when we have strong winds, 60 kilometers per hour. It's kind of difficult. But we'll be able to run the gondola up to 100 with winds up to 100 kilometers per hour. So,
just assuming anyone wants to go up.
Absolutely.
But I've skied in Scotland this year. That's nothing. But the cabins themselves are also, you're talking about the comfort for people. The cabins are going to be quite high spec, right?
Right. Panoramic view. It will be all glass. It will be much more comfortable to go up to the glacier. And, this gondola is made for skiers, but not only. It will operate during summer, so it will be accessible for people in their wheelchair. Families will be able to go up. It will be really like a different experience. The goal is to experience the altitude, the glacier.
Well, it is beautiful up there. And, I saw people up there today who weren't skiers. They'd literally gone up so they could drop down to the funicular and then go up to that marvellous viewing platform that looks out over the Parc des Écrins.
Absolutely.
Incredible views over in that direction. It's great that people can access it. And obviously, you have a lot of summer activity here as well. You mentioned that kind of diversification. Is this lift, I know you're looking a long way ahead. I mean, I read somewhere that it's a lift that's going to be with the resort for 50 years.
Absolutely.
Are you building it thinking about climate change as well?
Yes. I think we're not skeptical towards climate change. The goal is really to anticipate. We need to diversify. We are totally aware of it. And we built the new Gendry thinking about, 50 years ahead, the actual Gendry is 40 years old. So, we are on the same time lap in terms of vision about our business.
Yeah, and I think it's also quite interesting with a resort like Ladies Out. If people haven't been here, it's almost, some people say it's kind of the opposite of other resorts in that it's slightly steeper, maybe coming finally down into the resort, and the gentle slopes are a bit higher up. And with a lift like this, you're always going to be able to offer, let's say, skiing for beginners or intermediates, newcomers to the sport, but at really high altitude as well.
Altitude, yeah. Most of our of the ski area is above 2,000 meters high. So we are aware of climate change, but we're also aware that we're going to be able to offer skiing for the next 30 years. And I think that the Gendry is really going to make a difference.
Excellent. And what about the challenges of building that new Gendry then? Because we're here in April of 2024. The project's been running for quite a while already. There are different pylons up on the mountain, and you've kind of built the base station and the mid station, but there's a lot more to do, and you have to deal with the weather in all of that construction.
The challenge. It's a really challenging project because we are still in the mountain, very high altitude, so it's a very hostile environment with strong winds. It's very cold. We need to bring materials at a very high altitude. So we need to build this gondola within the next. It took 20 months total to build it. The goal was to make sure that we didn't have to close during one winter because the ski is our main business here in the resort. So we had to gradually make sure that we were building the main infrastructures during spring and summer. So we work on the outside during spring and summer. During winter, we work inside all the buildings. And this summer 2024, yes, we're going to install the new cable. And the goal is to open the new Gendry on the 30th of November.
Right, you've already answered my next question. When is it going to open? So if people want to be able to enjoy it and try it out for the first time, they'll be able to come out here at the start of the season.
Yes.
Yeah, well, to me, I can see that it's going to make a massive difference to the resort. And this is my third trip here in 2 years, I think, now. And during that time, I've seen, the new Telemix, which is a mix of chairlifts and gondolas over in Diable. And then there's also a Telemix over here. Is this Belle Étoile, the lift over here? And then the gondola over on Super Venosque as well. But all of that investment really is small relative to this Gendry.
We believe in Les Deux Alpes. We know that, as you mentioned it, that the ski area is located above 2,000 meters high. So we really believe that skiing will be great in the next years, and that's why we have to modernize the resort. And we invest a lot in Les Deux Alpes because we believe that it's a beautiful destination.
Well, I believe it's a beautiful destination too, and I look forward to coming back and trying it. That's brilliant, Anthony. Merci
Thank you
bien.
very much. Merci.
So that's going to be very exciting for next season for Ladies Out. But I'd like to come back to our trip now. I mentioned how we travelled out there. And the reason I've asked Tarrant from Vans for Bands to join us on the show today is that we drove there and back in one of their 9-seater luxury splitter minivans. So firstly, Tarrant, before we get onto the specifics, can I just ask you how Vans for Bands came about? When did the company start?
It started in 2006, and I think, like a lot of people, I got into it, what I've done with my life by accident. I was doing an MPhil in politics at Oxford, and I was about to do a law conversion degree, but I'd always worked in the music industry, and the only suppliers of these vehicles, specialist vehicles, were in London at the time, and I was just sick of going up and down the road to pick them up, so I got my own, and then it just grew organically from there to the point where we're now the biggest supplier in Europe. You
were obviously playing in a band yourself at the time then?
Yeah, well, so I was playing in a band. I still actually do. I play for a guy called Frank Turner. So I play bass for Frank Turner. And I was also touring as a tour manager at the time. I did it all the way through the end of my school and university at the same time. So that's where it came from. It was a kind of natural accident.
Right. And so are you saying, did you drop out of Oxford, or did you completely?
No, I finished it, but really doing an undergraduate degree and then doing postgrad was an excuse to not have to go and get a job. And the next stage of that was going to be doing a law conversion course to do commercial law, to see how far I could stretch it out without actually having to do a 9 to 5.
Right, but so you bought a van yourself, and you saw the opportunity to grow that business.
Yeah, so I bought my own van, and then a friend of mine needed one, so I rented it out to him. Then I didn't have my own, so I had to buy a second, and so on and so forth. And it just grew quite fast and naturally.
And how many have you got in your fleet now then?
Just shy of 60 vans and 16 full-size nightliners, which are the big double-decker coaches.
Right, I had no idea it was that big. I have seen some of the videos. Evidently, there's a lot of them. Those nightliner coaches, just before we went out to Ladies Out, we're driving past the Brighton Dome. Got very excited because I saw one of it is branded Vans for Vans, which I believe was used by Yard Act. Who were some of the bands that you've worked with then over the years?
Probably most of the people you could think of, but if so, a couple of names or a handful of names: Liam Gallagher, Ariana Grande, Blossoms, Elbow, Dua Lipa, Stranglers, The Pretenders. I mean, I go on and on and on. But at some point, most artists will have been in our vehicles.
That's pretty amazing. So you're obviously the leader in that market. And the reason that we were in the van is, my understanding is that the vans are most used in summer. I guess people are kind of moving to festivals, or they're just more tours in summer. How does that work?
Yeah, it is. The touring market is condensing towards the summer because the festival scene's got so big over the last kind of 10 years or so. So a lot of touring happens between kind of May and September, October, and we tend to be a lot less busy over the winter months when it's quiet.
That kind of makes sense, and the benefit to that is that the vans are available for rental. I mean, I guess the coaches are probably available for rental too, although I'm not really too sure exactly who they would apply to. Somebody who wants to really go in luxury. Do you just want to give us an idea of what those are like on the inside?
So those are basically like a high-end hotel on wheels. The big ones have got up to 16 beds or bunks upstairs, and then you've got 2 lounges. You've got a kitchen. You've got a toilet compartment in there as well. If you think of a really nice yacht, it's basically a yacht on wheels, a land yacht.
Yeah, well, I'm not quite sure that's necessarily going to be suitable for anyone who's going on holiday. Although I interviewed Bodie Miller, maybe in the autumn or something like that. He's, one of the most successful ski racers of all time. He enjoyed traveling around the Alps when he was on the World Cup circuit in his own, Winnebago, a very upscale motorhome. This would probably be a step further than that. But the more accessible side of things, and what we did, was to go in one of the what you call luxury splitter minivans. I wondered if you could give us a description of kind of what format they are.
The splitter vans are a combination of a panel van with storage area right at the back, and then a really nice high-end minibus up the front. They've all got the driver's seat plus 8 passenger seats. In the passenger compartment, usually the seats are around a table, and they usually recline. And then there's an entertainment system in there as well, with a hard drive full of movies. You can also stream from Netflix or any of the other streaming platforms on there. And there's obviously a stereo system as well, so you can listen to music. They're just really comfortable ways to travel.
Yeah, well, I could back that up. It was extremely comfortable. The model that we had 3 seats at the front, and then the 2 sets of 3 facing each other in the back, and they were very comfortable. The screens, both ends of the kind of cabin compartment area, means that the 3 on each side can look up and see a screen. That was the luxury version. I think you have different versions in your 60 vans that you've got. How is the format of the basic splitter?
Basics. So they're all forward-facing seats. There's a little bit less space in the back. It's on a slightly smaller chassis, so it's a medium wheelbase chassis. There is an entertainment system, but you don't get the hard drive. They're just not quite as comfortable, really. The seats don't recline as much.
I'd say for us, it just works so well. I mean, we were chatting in the green room before we went live, and this saying we went with another family. So 5 of us, 4 from the other family, all teens in the back, or one adult and the teens in the back. And it just works so well. I actually recorded some audio on the journey, so let's have a quick listen to that. So we've got about 60 kilometres to go to Calais, just done our last fuel stop. Yeah, I would say it's been a pretty good journey. What do you think of the handling of the vehicle, Pip?
It's great. I really like it. I like being high up I like the fact that it feels really sturdy, but it's got good acceleration if you need it.
Yeah, and even when it was windy, there was some big crosswinds earlier, but it was good. I think being high up though, that's really important. There were a couple of times where we had some bit of bad traffic, and I like the fact that you can see ahead. It is a manual. You're used to driving an automatic, but that as Pip said, it's like riding a bike.
Yeah.
It doesn't take long to get used to again. Once you can find reverse.
When you've driven for so long, it's only been 3 years since I drove a stick manual, so it's good.
Yeah, and the music is really good. We've connected up our phones with Bluetooth, so you can listen to anything you want to. Our rule is the driver chooses what music is on. When the kids are watching a movie in the back, we've had to get them to turn it down a couple of times when there've been car chases and things like that. But otherwise, generally very good, and there's plenty of space here up front as well as that in the back.
I'm going to say the key points are it's very, very comfortable and there's a lot of space. When we've driven out to the Alps before, it feels like the whole car is just jammed full of food and bags, and the three sitting across the back don't have any space at all. We don't have any space at our feet. But these vans are designed for putting, I guess, loads of speakers and drum kits and guitars, etc. in the back. And we just didn't get anywhere near to filling the space that's available back there. It's incredible. In fact, I took a photo, we're in a resort, of the 4 teenage boys in full ski gear with their skis and snowboards standing in the space where you can put the luggage, and they didn't even fill all of it. There is so much space in there, and that just immediately makes it more comfortable. What I really liked about it was sharing the driving between more than 2 drivers. We actually stopped on the way, but I don't think that we would do that again next time, and we're definitely thinking about renting it again for next year because it went so well. We would actually do the whole journey in one, which we did on the way back. Normally we split it up on the way out there because there's 2 drivers, but when you've got in our case 3, or you could have 4, or you could have as many as you want if you've got adults with a driving license, it's just so much more sociable as well. In the back, normally, I'm pretty sure if we had 3 kids in the back of our car, they'd all be on their phones and they'd all be separate. But because there were 6, it was much more sociable. They were talking to each other the whole time. And it's kind of rare that you get that situation with teens. And an important point for me as well is I worked out the carbon footprint. The mileage isn't particularly good, the economy. I think I worked it out in the end at 27 miles per gallon. But because there's 9 of you, it actually works out really well. And it's not as good as traveling by train, for example, in terms of minimizing your carbon footprint, but it is way, way less than flying. Importantly as well, it's not hugely expensive. Tarrant, can I just check the costs? My understanding is that if you wanted like one of the basic splitters where they're all forward facing, it'd be from £145 a day. But for the type of vehicle we had, it's $200 per day.
For out of the kind of winter period, that'd be right. So from now onwards, for the rest of the year, it'd be that price range.
Well, for us, including delivery, because the van was delivered to our house, insurance, there were chains in the back. Fortunately, we didn't need those. And I think it's important to point out as well, you don't need a special license. If you've got a regular license, because it's under, I think my understanding is it's under 3.5 tons, and you can drive
correct,
it without a different license. That's right.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, it's under 3.5 tons and no more than 8 passenger seats.
So it worked out for us for a 9-day trip at about £280 per person, because we're sharing all of the petrol and all of the payage across 9 people effectively. So my summary of that is great for families, maybe especially for teens, although I'm sure it will work for younger kids as well. They don't need the leg space in the same way that fully grown people do. Maybe good for race teams if you've got loads of skis. I remember interviewing different racers before about I think Dave Riding told me they had like 30 pairs of skis that they cart around with them. You can actually fit those in the back. Obviously good for bands as well. Good fun, comfort, multiple drivers. And, I'm going to put a link into the show notes. And really, Tarrant, I think it was one of your colleagues, Ben, who kind of brought it to my attention. So we should thank him as well. Cool. Okay. Well, thanks very much for that. Now, we're going to move on to Bex now. I wanted to have you on the show because I saw an article that you wrote, I think for the Telegraph, was it?
Yes, that's right.
And that was about, and I'm hoping I've got the pronunciation right here, a Trysil in Norway. Is that correct?
Oh, so my Norwegian pronunciation isn't great either. So do apologise. I apologise to everyone in Norway listening. It's Trysil.
Trysil.
Yes.
We've had quite a bit of focus on Norway this winter. We've covered several different destinations and had people on. And I think there's a sense to me that there's increasing interest in the UK. And it might be because, you and other journalists are writing articles like this. It also might be because people are looking at Norway as having possibly a more reliable snowpack so that they can go away. And even though it's lower, they can be more confident they're going to get snow. So just tell me, Beck, to start off with, when were you out there and how do you get there?
So I was out there, it was actually last Easter that I was out there with my daughter, and also my parents came as well. So it was a multi-generational family trip. You could certainly travel there overland. It would be a big adventure. It would be possible though, but actually it's fantastically close to a very new airport called Scandinavian Mountain Airport. Trysil sits on the border of Norway and Sweden. It's about 2.5 hours north of Oslo. The airport is just over the border in Sweden, but it's about a 40-minute drive maximum from the airport. And because Trysil, the resort, sits at about 350 metres above sea level, the drive is really easy. There's no soaring hairpin bends up to a mountaintop. It's flat. There was one hairpin bend at the end. So it's a really, really easy transfer. And it's one of the reasons why it's so good for families. And it's just proving very, very popular.
So, sorry, did you say, so you wouldn't fly into Oslo? You fly into, did you say it was a new airport really close to the resort?
Yes, that's right. It's an airport called Scandinavian Mountain Airport and opened in 2019. We've travelled with a company called Ski Scandinavia who've been operating in Scandinavia for about 20 years now. They really specialise in fantastic family holidays to some of the main resorts in Norway and Sweden. They operate a brilliant package holiday that includes flights to Scandinavian Mountain Airport.
I know you mentioned the altitude just then, but remind me what altitude it is?
The resorts, it's at 350 metres, which, when you're comparing that to Alpine resorts, it sounds crazy. But it sits at 350 metres and it goes up to a height of 1,132 metres. But because it just sits so far north, it was absolutely fine. And we've found that Easter just was such a sweet spot because some friends had been at February half term and they'd said it is very cold, and other people had sort of also said similar. Whereas at Easter, it was still cold, but it was longer, lovely long days. Sun wasn't setting until sort of 8:30 or so. And the snow was really, really good still, plenty of snow cover. I found it hard to sort of actually appreciate just how brilliant it was because it was that perfect mix of lovely warm sunny days but great snow, easy transfer, brilliant ski in ski out accommodation. That was one of the things that stood out the most, actually, was just the quality of the whole thing. What Ski Scandinavia are doing, as well as just being in Norway, and the Scandinavian approach to a ski holiday it's just next level. And we were worried before we went about the cost. Particularly, we'd heard rumours of, say, oh my gosh, like a bottle of wine is going to be £100. Oh my God. And we were pleasantly surprised to find that it was still expensive, but it was more like £40 for a bottle of house wine rather than £100. Beers were comparable to London prices. It wasn't the absolutely eye-wateringly expensive thing that we'd feared.
That is interesting, and it fits in with some of the comments we've had previously about Norway, earlier this winter in the different episodes that we've had, where it's on the expensive side but not outrageously expensive relative to, for example, like let's say London. You mentioned as well that so the top point's 1,100, so you've got about a 700 to 800 meter vertical drop there as well, which is which is pretty decent because some of the resorts in Norway, it's half that as well. So you've got some reasonable runs. You were obviously on a 3-generational holiday there, but how many lifts or pistes are there? What sort of skier is it suitable for?
Trysil is actually Norway's largest ski area. It's got 81 kilometres of slopes. Where we stayed, it was called the Radisson Blue. It is now been taken over by Ski Star, so it's the Ski Star Lodge. Basically, the resort of Trysil sits around one mountainside, so you've got the front side and the back side. The Ski Star Lodge is on the back side, and totally ski in, ski out. And surrounding it are all these beautiful green runs that have just got pine trees dotted among them, and so they're just really easygoing green runs. They're lovely. They're just fun. And there's also Valet is the local snowman mascot for the kids, and he's got his fun area there as well. So it's great fun for that. Between the front and the back, you've then got the steepest area of slopes, and there's lots of blacks there, black runs there, even something as steep as 45 degrees, and you get ski teams race training out there and that sort of thing. Right. And they're among the trees, and they are again just like really super fun. The snow conditions are good on them as well. And then on the front side, that's the sort of the largest area of connected slopes, and you can ski across the top to get to them. And next winter, there's a new chairlift actually going in from that base centre right up to the top as well. More than enough for us. With my daughter at the time was 6. She was certainly very happy on the backside. We didn't make it over to the front side with her, but I did, and had a brilliant time skiing around. Felt like there was plenty to going on with.
I mean, actually just called up the piece map while you were chatting there to have a look. So what you said kind of, makes sense because I could see it visually as well. And I see that area where there's a whole grouping of black runs going down through the trees there. That looks kind of interesting. So that's where the people are doing their race training, is it?
Yes, that's right. Yeah,
it looks really interesting. Unlike, I guess, some Norwegian resorts, there's no kind of lake or fjords to look down onto.
No, but you are just, the view from the top is just, if anyone has been to Scandinavia, is that just vast stretch. You can't see any other resorts in sight. You can't see any towns in sight. It's just rolling hills, snow-covered hills, lots of trees. I find it a really peaceful view. It just sort of, it's just calm. It's lovely. One thing we did do one night was go out on a horse-drawn sleigh ride about 20 minutes away from the resort. We went out with Svein Eriksen and his and out to the teepee that he builds in the woods each winter to eat a dinner of very locally caught reindeer around a fire. And that felt very, very authentic and very real local experience.
I think you mentioned that Ski Star are the kind of owners of the resort, and Ski Star is a company that's very big in Scandinavia. They own a whole number of resorts there.
Yeah.
Am I right in thinking, I think I'm drawing this from my memory, that they were responsible for building that airport there? That's part of one of their projects?
I would need to double check that, but yeah, that does sound very plausible because Ski Star also own the Sälen resort, which is over the border in Sweden. And actually, I was listening back to one of your earlier podcasts. We were talking about the resort that's closest to an airport. I think Sälen must take that crown because we also spent some time in Sälen in Sweden with Ski Scandinavia. Brilliant resort as well. Being picked up from the hotel. We arrived at the airport 8 minutes later. And in fact, actually, my dad had forgotten to pack his bag. He'd forgotten to put his bag in the minibus. And of all the hotels and airports to do that, it was perfect. It was like, oh yeah, back in 15 minutes.
Right, sorry, you didn't realise till you got to the airport.
No.
Right, okay, classic. What about, one of the more traditional, perhaps, Scandinavian activities? Did you, have any saunas and then jump in the snow afterwards, or was there any ice swimming or anything like that?
No, there's not in the Ski Star Lodge Blue. There is a lovely pool with an outdoor space, and yes, they do have hot tubs, so you can then go and run in the snow. It felt really cold, actually. I'm ashamed to say I didn't do it this time. I've done it in Finland, but I didn't do it then. But no, there was just also sort of after skiing, there was lots of sledging because it's ski in, ski out accommodation. You've literally got this sledge track right outside your apartment. There was igloo building. We could also go temping bowling. We felt though that we just had more than enough to do just playing in the snow.
Well, it sounds very relaxing trip. So I appreciate you for bringing us up to date on all of that. Okay, we're going to move on to feedback now. I enjoy all feedback about the show. I like to know what you think, especially about our features. So please do contact me on social @Ski Podcast or by email theskipodcast@gmail.com. Adam Fisher He said, really enjoy listening to the podcast. You're doing a great job. It helps me out with a bit of research. And I should just let you know that I am English, but I am your Mexican listener, as I spend a bit of time over there. And regular listeners will know that we have listeners all over the world. So it doesn't matter where you're listening to the show. That's great to hear, Adam. Michael Hart also contacted us saying, enjoying listening to the ski podcast as usual. I appreciate the work you do on sustainability, but I'm mindful of the difficulties that skiers in the North Scotland have with train travel. I've taken the decision to offset my carbon to mitigate air travel, but the lack of a viable train option from Manchester remains a problem. And, Michael, I completely understand that. I'm an hour and a half from London or an hour and 20 minutes from St Pancras. It's much easier for me to get the train. I appreciate that, listener, you might be elsewhere in the country and you might want to go by train and it's not going to work as well. Maybe. If this, direct London to Geneva train starts up, then the overall time savings will make it worthwhile. But we should continue to lobby. And there's actually a really good petition, another petition going on at Flight Free UK at the moment, which is about, helping to subsidise British train travel, because sometimes that's the most expensive part of the journey. Andy Aitkenhead also contacted me. He said, I found the recent episode on Andermatt and Vale resorts of interest. That is episode 204. I was in Andermatt just before the deal was announced. I'm heading to Engelberg in just over a week, and I'm currently wrestling over travel, given my concerns about climate change. There's a theme here, isn't there? Currently, my calculations are that it will be cheaper to fly, but I wondered if you had any tips for reducing the cost over Eurostar and SNCF prices. Keep up the good work with the podcast. So my answer to that, in terms of being able to travel by train at the lowest cost, is kind of the same as the approach for flying. It's to book early. If you know your dates, firstly, buy your Eurostar. I always buy my tickets separately. If I know my dates, I'll buy my Eurostar straight away. And that means that'll be about £98 return. Sometimes a little bit less, but normally it's £49 in each direction. Then, annoyingly, you have to wait for SNCF to put their tickets up on sale, which is normally around 3 months beforehand. But what you can do is you can sign up for a ticket alert. So you are ready that day when they become available. I also publish those on Ski Flight Free and on Facebook as well. And if you get in there quickly and buy them, they can be excellent value. And more recently, I've been just booking first class instead of second class because it's normally only about €10 more expensive. And, it's nice to have the extra space.
Can I add to that as well? Because we've just booked our summer holiday travel. Ian, thinking of you going away with a group of 15, I booked group train travel. And via Eurostar, you actually speak to someone. It was so helpful. They were amazing. And the price was cheaper than what we were getting quoted on online. It's fantastic. So if you happen to be travelling in a big group, I highly recommend looking into group train travel, both with SNCF and Eurostar.
That is really interesting to hear, because I have had people contact me before. I remember I had a school contact me who was saying they're finding it incredibly difficult booking group travel. Are you going on from Paris to somewhere else, Bex?
Yes. Yeah, we're then getting sleeper train down to Perpignan, or possibly even right down to the Spanish border. And at the moment, I've just got that option held with SNCF. I just need to pay for it. They're like, these prices are guaranteed until July the 5th. I was absolutely blown away how easy they make it, but you just need to be traveling at least with 10 people.
That is really good to hear. And as it goes, our family summer holiday is also going to be by train. We're doing something similar, Eurostar to Paris, and then we're catching that overnight train from Paris down to Nice. So slightly different line, or they might separate somewhere along the way, I think. And I did that Nice overnight train last year. Personally, I thought it was great, absolutely great fun. And a final point from Andy, he said, love the podcast, though the use of the word listener always seems a bit strange. Now, listener, I often refer to you as a listener. And the reason I do that is because I think that most people listen to podcasts individually. It's not often that you're playing it through a speaker and several of you are listening. I do have a friend who his wife tells me I was listening to your voice the other day because he plays it in the car when they're on long journeys. So everyone else doesn't get a choice. But I think that probably listener, if you're listening to this now, you're doing it on your own, probably with headphones in. Maybe you're commuting, or maybe you're at the gym, or maybe you're going for a run, or maybe you're just working, etc. But Andy, that's why I do it. I'm welcome to have other feedback, though. If you think I should be referring to listeners the whole time, then I will. Now, if you like the podcast, I'm going to ask you to do one thing this week. It won't take you long, just a minute or two. If you can, give us a review. I'd really appreciate it. You can review us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, and it helps other listeners find us. And if that doesn't suit you, then I even appreciate a comment on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or YouTube. We're at Ski Podcast on all of those. There are now 214 episodes to catch up with. I had a look earlier today, and 162 were listened to in the last week. And I see there was even one person who listened to our first ever episode recorded back in 2017. And if that's you, listener, I would love to know what you think, because the Ski Podcast is very, very different now. If you do want more ski chat to keep you going between seasons, we're going to continue to produce one every fortnight through the summer. I've still got another 2 more to go during April. But if you want to catch up, there's lots to listen to in our back catalogue. Just go to theskipodcast.com and search around the tags and categories, and you're bound to find something of interest to you. Also, in the stats, I had a look. 51% of our listeners in the last week were from the UK, 17% in the States. That means 32% of you were listening from somewhere else across the world, including in countries like Malaysia, Iceland, Venezuela. And there was even one listener in the Russian Federation. So just on the off chance that that is you, Comrade Putin, enough of all that war stuff, please. Give peace a chance. Seriously, though, I'd like to thank all of our listeners, wherever you are in the world. You can follow me at Skipedia and the podcast at Ski Podcast. But for now, I'd like to thank Intersport for sponsoring the show, and thank my guest today, Bex.
Thanks, Iain, for having me on. It's brilliant.
And Tarrant, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me on.
And finally, listener, thank you for joining us. And until next time, goodbye.